Trust is a fragile thing, especially when you are among people divided by politics, ambition, and fear. Imagine standing in a position where every step you take is watched by friends and enemies alike, and danger comes from those you thought were your allies. What would you do if betrayal struck within? Have you ever been in those shoes? This was the reality Pope Leo III faced shortly after his election. His leadership stirred unrest among powerful rivals in Rome, and he found himself at the center of a deadly conspiracy. So, with my trusted magnifying glass, we are going beyond the surface. We're going to look deeper into the political intrigue, the hidden motives, and the resilience that defined Leo's response. Because sometimes the most important battles, they're not fought with swords and guns and cannons or whatever, but with courage and faith. So let us zoom in on a certain moment in history that could have ended Leo's mission very early. It was an assassination attempt that sent shockwaves throughout the whole Christian world. 3 years after Charlemagne had vowed to defend the church with both his sword and his faith, Pope Leo found himself facing a threat far closer to home. It wasn't from a distant enemy or some invading army, but from within the very heart of Rome itself. Can you imagine that? The danger didn't come from someone wearing armor or flying a foreign banner or flag. Instead, it came from familiar faces. Men with power, ambition, and hidden agendas, all masked behind a false loyalty. And these weren't pagans or heretics. They were insiders. And they were ready to kill to get what they wanted. So, on April 25th, in the year of our Lord, 799, as Pope Leo led the traditional procession for the Feast of St. Mark, something completely unthinkable happened, and the streets of Rome turned violent. Now, what should have been a solemn moment of prayer and unity turned into chaos and betrayal. Suddenly, armed men leaped from the shadows, sent by the jealous nephew of the late Pope Adrian, who refused to accept Leo's authority, believing that only someone of noble birth deserved to hold the papal office. And I'm sure he was probably thinking he should have been elected Pope. And these men dragged the Holy Father into the streets, beating him mercilessly and treating him like a criminal. But their cruelty didn't stop there. Twice they tried to gouge out his eyes and tear out his tongue, desperate to silence him forever, both as a man and as the voice of the church. Now, there are some contemporary sources that claim these attackers actually succeeded. And according to writings from the time, Pope Leo was left blind and unable to speak. It seemed like everything ended. No. Here is where the story takes a miraculous turn. According to tradition, in the silence and darkness of his suffering, help came from heaven, and from none other than St. Peter and St. Paul, guardians of the church. They appeared to Pope Leo and miraculously restored his sight and speech. It was as if heaven itself was sending a powerful message. You may strike the shepherd, but you will not silence the church. That day, it wasn't just a man who was restored, but the voice and vision of the church. Yet, the danger wasn't over. The enemies who had tried to destroy Leo by violence, they simply changed their tactics. When using force failed, they turned to deception. And they orchestrated, this is hard enough to believe, a sham trial to accuse him of crimes he had never committed in an effort to discredit him. Now, put yourself in Leo's place. You're bruised and shaken, yet refusing to give up. So with courage and determination, he escaped the clutches of his enemies, and he fled north, now crossing through dangerous terrain, even hostile lands. Now, you're probably wondering and asking, where was he going? What was his destination? His destination was the court of Charlemagne. Now you can imagine when Charlemagne saw the battered pope before him, he was utterly horrified. This wasn't just an attack on a man. It was a scandal, a total scandal that completely shook the spiritual and political order of Christendom. Now the king received Leo with reverence and compassion, treating him not as a fallen leader, but as a suffering shepherd who carried the weight of the church on his shoulders. Now Charlemagne vowed not only to restore Leo's honor, but to ensure that justice would be served. Months later, Pope Leo made his way back to Rome, not in secrecy or fear, but in a solemn procession, flanked by royal guard sent by Charlemagne himself. And the message was clear. The Pope was not alone. Christendom stood firmly behind him. Shortly after, Charlemagne arrived in the Eternal City, and with him the full weight of the imperial power. He came to silence the chaos, to confront the opposing groups threatening Rome from within, and most importantly, to publicly vindicate the name of Pope Leo. Now, let me ask you something. Have you ever faced a moment when you felt powerless or misunderstood? How did you find the strength and courage to keep standing? Leo's story reminds us that sometimes the darkest trials prepare us for the greatest of missions. The complaints against Pope Leo were thoroughly discredited, and his accusers, they were all arrested, thoroughly discredited, and order was restored in Rome. In a bold stand, Pope Leo ascended the pulpit of St. Peter's Basilica, and before a hushed crowd, placed his hand on the Holy Gospel. St. Peter's Basilica, in the presence and before bishops, nobles, and the faithful, he solemnly swore an oath of innocence. A simple act of truth, spoken before God and man. And in that moment, he wasn't just a pope trying to defend his name. It was the papacy itself, reaffirming its divine authority. Throughout all the trials Pope Leo faced, he didn't give up. He kept going. Throughout not because he had all the answers, but because he trusted that God was still at work, even in the midst of all that confusion. And that's something we can hold on to. When things around us feel uncertain or heavy, we don't have to carry it alone. We can turn to our Blessed Mother. Just like so many saints did. She's not far off or hard to reach. She listens, she understands. And for that, I encourage you to make your consecration to Jesus to the hands of Mary. And let her be your refuge. Bring her your fears, your confusion, your difficulties. In a world where we are misunderstood by many, the Blessed Virgin Mary understands us. You don't have to have it all figured out. Just start by placing your trust in her. All figured out. Let Our Lady lead you step by step to peace. And for that, I'm going to leave a link to the consecration in the description below. Now back to our story. For that, I'm going to leave a link. Like Pope St. Leo, we may be tested by trials that shake us to the core. But these moments, if we let them, these moments can become turning points for our spiritual growth and renewal. What began as an attempt to silence the Pope ended in something no one could have predicted. A moment that would reshape the Church and the Empire forever. Because not long after the Pope Leo's return to Rome, something extraordinary happened. Unfortunately, our time is up. But in the next part of this story, we're going to witness a crowning moment. Literally. And how this crowning moment sealed a powerful alliance and change the course of history. So I hope to see you in the next video where we will unravel all this together. So God bless and Salve Maria.